Give us a breakdown of the data that we just got.
Yeah, obviously the data that we saw was a little bit on the disappointing side. The good news obviously is that export growth continues for Japan, but the growth in exports was much lower than we expected. It was lower than all but one of the economists that we surveyed, and obviously the trade deficit was much higher was much wider, I should say, than we expected. Mm-hmm. A lot of the deficit comes from the rising cost in import prices. The surprising thing for the data for me, and I think you've flagged it there as well, is that we saw that exports to the US dropped for second consecutive month, and they were down quite a bit more than they were down last month.
All right. Now, how big of an impact has the US-China trade war had on Japan, if we can figure that out?
Well, it's a good question. Haven't figured it out just yet. Up until these figures, we would have said that there hasn't been much of a direct impact so far. It's a big worry, obviously, that's looming in the horizon for Japan. But as of right now, the steel tariffs haven't had much of a direct impact. Japan has been quick to say that there's been basically no direct impact from the steel tariffs. Having said that, we are seeing that exports to the US have dropped. So it's tempting to draw a direct line there. I don't know if there is a direct line to be drawn. Obviously, Japan is in not a bad position to be in terms of they are selling to all sides in the trade war. So it's not a bad position in theory for Japan to be in, but obviously the state are quite a bit weaker than we expected.
Yeah, especially when you still have these U.S. and Japan talks going on, a potential summit between President Trump and Shinzo Abe to try to kind of hammer down these trade issues. What do you think the outlook is going forward then?
Well, it all depends, I think, for Japan. It all depends on the issue of auto tariffs. As you mentioned, talks are going on right now between Japan's trade minister and his counterpart in the US. They had those talks earlier this month. I think they're having another session that's going to start next month. Japan is desperate to avoid any impact from auto tariffs. That would be, I think, a devastating blow, far more significant than anything that we've seen from steel or any other issues so far. So the outlook is basically dominated by that issue. And we won't know the result of that, I think, for another couple of months, whether those happen at all, or whether Japan manages to get an exemption in the event that they do happen. Apart from that, the outlook looks relatively rosy, despite the looming specter of U.S. protectionism. The yen is in a good place for Japan right now, and we expect that oil prices will right themselves so that we won't see the deficits that we saw today. But all depends on the U.S. right now.